Feedback is a gift, and you need to know who to ask and when to ask when you're writing your application. So that's what we're going to talk about here today. Hi, I'm Michelle Davis. I'm a teacher career coach, and I help teachers who would like to be leaders transition from the classroom into leadership roles. So as an aspiring leader, feedback is going to be one of your biggest gifts. You don't know what you don't know. So seeking that out is really important. And as you're going through, specifically for this video, we're talking about the application process. So as you're going through the application process and the stages that you work through and actually putting together a selection criteria response or the whole application, who do you ask and what does that look like? And so that's what I'm going to talk about. My mentor says to me, no great thing is built on theory. So I need to take it out of the box and I need to use it to figure out whether or not it's going to work or not. Same goes with your selection criteria. You need to write it so that you know whether or not you can actually use it as in its current state, and you need to get that feedback. So I've got 4 stages that I think you would naturally work through during the application process. So stage 1 is going to be that initial draft. Maybe no one else has seen this except for you. You've been toiling away in the background in the evenings, whenever you can catch a little bit of time, and you're trying to put together a selection criteria response. Now you're doing that in a silo at that stage because we're just wanting to get something down. And in this initial stage, your biggest chance of getting some really good feedback is your own aspiring leaders network. And in that aspiring leaders network, it's how have you answered this? What's going on here? Here's what I've written. What do you think? And because that initial stage is often the one that you aren't necessarily going to be the most confident walking in and showing it to a head of department because you know everyone's time is limited. And so I've often had people come to me and say, yeah, look, I've written it. I've had a few friends have a look and I think it's okay. And in that initial stage, you do want to get some feedback from those around you if you've got the right people you can trust. If you don't have those kind of people around you, then that initial stage of feedback is really about sitting down potentially with a direct line manager or somebody who's a couple of steps ahead of you and writing theirs, just so you can get some more general feedback. When you're doing this, it's really important that you are not precious with your words in this stage because they're going to change dramatically from the time you start to the time you finish. So don't beholden to them. Just because you've spent a whole bunch of time writing these 3 or 4 sentences doesn't mean that you've hit the nail on the head. They might sound great to you, but again, you're doing it in a silo. So as part of that drafting, you want to make sure that this is the one stage you can be incredibly verbose. Like really get down as many words as you can in any kind of structure is good. Star model is always great. And I've got a video on star model. And so that's really useful, but you need to just make sure you're getting as much out as possible so that you're capturing all those little thoughts. But that then also links in with the first statement I made, which was don't be precious with them. Just because they came out of you doesn't mean you're necessarily going to use them. If you are a talker, which as teachers we kind of naturally are, my other suggestion for you would be to get a dictation program of some kind. I use in my business, I use otter.ai, not sponsored. Just really like them. And for free, you get a bunch of time. So what you can do is you can just hit record, just talk it out as if you're telling a narrative. And that's one of my favorite ways to get aspiring leaders who have got a story down on paper is just to tell me about it so that we can pull apart the bits that you need and put that into your star model so that you've actually got more than a skeleton. You've got a really nice fleshed out story. And so what you can do with those programs is you just hit record and you can talk. It will record your voice in otter.ai and it will also translate that into text for you that you can download. And it's got like 600 minutes a month for free. It's quite big. So it's my favorite tool because it does both at the same time. I can listen to myself and I can read the words, and then that sparks even more ideas that are even better than my verbal onslaught that comes out of my mouth sometimes. And so I really like that because as teachers, we get really good at speaking, and sometimes our reflective process is so good when we just open our mouths and just talk it out. So after you've pulled that all together, you've got bits and pieces all over the place. It's very verbose, lots of words. You've tried to put it in some kind of structure. Awesome. Keep that together and then give yourself a night to sleep on everything, and then come back and look at it as it's all together and read it aloud again. And as you will do that, that process of all those words will slowly start to whittle down. So for that first stage of feedback, you just want to get as much down on paper. More words is better than less words. And when you've done all of that, you're then trying to just feel out other people around you who might be useful. If not, you're going to go straight to stage 2. So in stage 2, this is where you want to get your direct line manager involved. So if you are in high school, you were looking at your head of department. If you're in a primary school, your direct line manager could be an assistant principal already. It could be a deputy principal. It could be the head of curriculum, whoever you trust, because this isn't something that you go out and just go sharing with the world everywhere. You want to get some really good feedback. Also keep in mind, people that are on panels are great to ask, but I would probably recommend that more in stage 3. So at this stage, just your direct line manager, the person who knows you really well and has maybe read some bits. Now it's all together. You've actually got a whole response. Sometimes it's also nice if that whole response is only to one selection criteria, giving them one whole story. But I found that if you give them one whole story in the background, you're writing the next one, then they give you feedback on this one, you're going back to change here. So it's much better just to get it all down, because then holistically you go looking at all of your leadership stories. So when you do this, give it some formality, because this isn't just a everyday occurrence. You need to get permission from your line manager to say, I'm going for a position, or I'm just starting to write my selection criteria. I'd like you to read it. What's an appropriate time that we can then sit down together and I can get feedback. When you do that feedback, make sure that you're recording it in some way, again, with their permission, because the number of people I've spoken to who have come to work with me and I'm like, well, what was the feedback? And they give me 2 or 3 generic points, and then all the other stuff that they were given is kind of lost in the conversation. Or that's one of the most common ones. Or the other one is during the session when I was getting feedback, it all made complete sense. And I really got what they were saying. But then I walked out of the room and everything fell apart. And I can't remember exactly what I was meant to do, but it sounded good at the time. So those 2 situations tend to rock up at my door. And so what I would, ideally, what would have been lovely is if you could record that conversation. So you obviously seek permission and consent to do that, but record it, then listen back, and then write out your feedback. I do this with my coaching sessions when I work with people as well, because we're teachers, we talk real fast and there's lots of really great stuff, and it's not till you listen it back that you can actually get the next layer of thought and reflection going on. And that's because you've got something to reflect on. Your notes are great, their notes are great, but it's actually the content underneath what you're talking about that I can really help with. So, and that's what's really good for you to listen to later on. So I'd recommend making it formal, set up a meeting with your direct line manager, give them time to give you good quality feedback, and then make that meeting and then record that meeting so that you can be present for the conversation and really in your own thoughts, knowing that future you is going to have something really wonderful and juicy to reflect back on and actually use. All right, so stage 2, I would say, is the one where some people go backwards and forwards between stage 1 and 2 quite a bit. So after that initial feedback, if you're really off track, you might want to rewrite some stuff and then come back to them again. And that's really beautiful that they're seeing you follow through. And it's just good practice, because when you're in a leadership position and you're going to start to be the person on the other side of the desk who has other people coming to them for feedback, you want to have this nice clear process of where you're seeking consent, you're making a plan, you're giving both each other time and respect, and then you're sitting down and having a conversation, and then where to next. Beautiful change model happening there. And that's just with you practicing how to write your actual application. Stage 3, you now have gone through stage 1 and 2 with you having a go, people around you that you trust and support, your line manager having a look. The next layer, if you've got the time, and if you've got the time, wonderful, because I always recommend writing all of your application far before a job pops up, because the stories aren't going to change. Maybe the few flavors within the story will change, but the story is the story. And so what I want you to do then is to go to the next level up in the school. So you've sought permission from and feedback from your line manager. Now it's a chance to go to somebody that would definitely be sitting on a panel. So it could be interesting people to have a chat with, from my experience, is the line manager of your line manager. So because they know your line manager, if you're then letting them know, look, I'm going to get this other person to have a look through it, it then creates like a nice little flow through that you can see the clear messages that are coming through. Sometimes it's also nice if you've got you're in a bigger school and you've got somebody that is on a panel that does more staffing, and they actually interview quite a lot of people, not necessarily for leadership roles, but just interviewing in general. They're quite good to have a chat to. And obviously if you're in a small school, your principal is your go-to people. And so same process though, seek permission, set up a meeting, or give it to them and then set up a meeting within a time frame that they find acceptable, because that can be 48 hours. Quite frankly, if somebody puts something on your desk at 9 o'clock in the morning and you're going to then have to down tools at some point to be able to give them feedback the following morning, yes, if there's a short timeline, that might have to be the case, but then they don't have to say yes. So you need to be professional in asking for an appropriate amount of feedback time for them to get organized to give you that feedback, because you wouldn't want that on you. And as an authentic leader, you're trying to model what you would like to have happen. When you are in a leadership position, you would love for people to give you time and space to make good quality feedback notes and thoughts for them. So you want to now start to model that and set that expectation of the people that you're asking for feedback from. Again, that's a very authentic and aligned thing. If you come into asking for feedback from somebody far higher up that is, oh, can you really quickly just have a look at this for me? And I need it back by this afternoon. Then you're telling them that your lack of organization is then their problem. And it's not their problem. They can say no, and you have to be okay with that because you weren't organized to get this done early enough. So you're trying to model that idea there. And then once you're done, you're now looking at getting yourself organized to submit. And probably the next layer of feedback you're going to get is when you have submitted something and it hasn't been successful. That's the next place that you're probably going to want to give feedback. And so submitting an application saying, that classic email of thank you very much for your application. Unfortunately, we won't be taking it any further. That's the next place you're looking for feedback. And because this is often, it could be somebody in school or it can be somebody external, regardless, same process. You are instantly going to hit reply and you go, thank you so much for this opportunity. You're going to put back an email and says, I would really like some feedback around this. Or do you have any general feedback for me? In my experience, I've really loved when people have been really specific about the feedback that they want, because then I'm able to really dig down deeper into one area. But then you can ask for feedback in a timely manner. And if for any reason, and let them know like the follow-up that you're going to get. So I'd like some feedback. We can either do this in person or via email. Person is always preferable, but you don't always get that privilege, especially if it's not somebody in your school. If it's somebody outside of it, you're probably going to either get a phone call or potentially not even a phone call, maybe an email back. And I've had quite a few unfortunate cases where they've asked for feedback and followed up to ask for the feedback and still received nothing. And so you want to hit reply straight away. You want to be really specific about the feedback that you want, and then you're going to wait for that to come in. And so They're the 4 stages of feedback that you're going to try and you're going to work your way through. And I have another blog coming up about how to structure that email and some thoughts around feedback, especially after you've been unsuccessful. So you can watch out for that video on this YouTube channel. It'll also be, the blog will be attached at brilliantbrainscoaching.com.au. And if any of this process in here that I've spoken about, especially stage 1 and stage 2 and 3 even, and especially with 4, I have people coming to me with their application just going, what can I do to improve it? This is what I've been told. I'm not sure how to do that. And that's one of my genius zones, is working with people on that. If you are interested, I do a selection criteria health check, which is basically a 1-hour coaching session where we have a look through and I coach you through where those improvements can be and give you through hits and tips. I don't rewrite it for you. That's not my service, but my service is being able to draw out of you more information and tidy up some of those leadership processes so that you can get better quality information moving forward. And if you'd like that, there'll be a link below as well. All right. Thank you so much for your time and good luck on your application. Get out there, start writing it, even if there's no jobs to apply for, even if you're very beginning of your journey, just start writing. Just start having a go at it, because it'll never get better if you don't take it out of the box and start using it. All right. Thanks. I've been Michelle Davis.